We'll get there eventually.
Welcome to Scout the Shadows. Me, Coach Blake, Drew, my guy, as always. We're talking another 2026 NFL draft prospects. My first 5. We did quarterbacks last episode. Talked through kind of the top 5 guys consensus wise on the board. Gave our thoughts. Go back and check that out for sure because this is an exciting quarterback class. Even without Arch Manning, who we did not talk about in that episode in depth because we both believe he's a 2027 guy. But this week, we're going to I wanted to bring some variety to the table. So we're going to talk about a couple of running backs, a couple of defensive linemen, and then my favorite wide receiver in this class so far. I know Drew's got a lot of fun opinions on him as well. We're going to save him for the end because I'm excited. I haven't talked to Drew about him at all. I've tried to keep it pretty neutral so I can try and, really get a true reaction from you and hear your thoughts. But I want to start off with my guy, Jeremiyah Love, out of Notre Dame, because holy hell, what an awesome running back. And I feel like Jeremiyah Love is what people, and I don't take this the wrong way. I loved Ashton Jeanty, but Jeremiyah Love is what people made Ashton Jeanty sound like. Where I always thought Ashton Jeanty was a very one-dimensional guy. I didn't think he was a great, receiving running back. And I don't think, that's not a knock to him, really. Great downhill runner. But Jeremiyah Love can do it all. Very hard to bring him down. Great contact balance, great finish. Just one of my favorite running back prospects I've watched in the, I've only been doing this a short time, but I haven't seen anybody that's been able to step up to that level yet, except maybe Bijan so far. So I'm really excited to watch Love this season, especially. But I got to get your thoughts on my guy, Jeremiyah Love.
Yeah. I mean, again, I tend to be, not very bullish with stuff like that, but he is right on par with where I had Jeanty right now, and that's before we get a whole other year of tape on him. I wouldn't be surprised at all. He's very, very close to surpassing him. It wouldn't take very much. I love Jeremiyah Love. He is currently 6th on my board. Huge on him. I think he's pretty comfortably the most athletic back we've seen since Saquon. I don't think it's crazy to say that at all. The first thing you notice when you turn it on is the guy is just, his twitch is turned up to 12. His twitch has twitch. He's so elusive. He's really creative in the open field. When you mix all of that together, he's just got a nightmare to deal with in the open field. I think when you talk about guys like that too, it's always backhanded saying they don't have the power, but I wouldn't say that either. I don't think he's one-dimensional. I think not the strongest guy in the world. He's not somebody you're going to line up and run up the gut 20 times a game, but he punches above his weight class as far as contact balance and power goes. He'll run through somebody's chest when he needs to, because he's not the biggest guy in the world. Was he right over 200? I think
right around there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and he runs like a guy that's 215, 220. So he brings more punch than you would think. I think he's, like you mentioned, with Jeanty kind of lacking the receiving element, which I was a little bit higher of a receiver than you were. But I think Love, is a guy that I'd like to see him get used more in the Notre Dame offense in that way. But the reps that he did get, it's a guy you could probably survive as slot receiver if he needed to. He's shown everything I need to see as far as separation goes and hands goes and everything he needs as far as receiving skill set goes. But I'm just really, there's not a part of his game that I'm worried about right now. I've called him a blue chip running back before, which again, the only guys I've ever called that are Bijan, Jeanty, and now Love. So I think that for me to call a guy a blue chip, I've got to have really just no concerns about their game, and I think that fits Love's bill exactly. And I think one of the things that I'm kind of nitpicky about with running backs that I don't see a lot of people talk about is how well they corner. I kind of for me, you know me, I'm a wide zone guy. So when I get these guys out in space off tackle, you got to be able to go from, you got to be able to corner, quit that 90-degree turn and don't lose momentum. You got to be able to put a foot in the ground and get north. And I think I'll talk about that more with a running back we're going to get up next. But Love is probably the best I've ever seen. And again, I wasn't around for when Saquon was coming out, so I can't speak too much to that. I'm still pretty green when it comes to this whole evaluating thing, but there's just zero. It's almost like he gains speed when he corners. There's no loss in momentum. He's so explosive. He is explosion as a player. He's a loaded spring all the time. The footwork is super manipulative and impressive. You can see him manipulate second-level defenders with it when he's reading the lanes. I have no worries about the vision. The first-level burst is out of this world. I think, like I mentioned, I already talked about his power and his contact balance. I think he does a good job, too. Another thing that doesn't get talked about enough with running backs. And again, you see the Derrick Henry shrine behind me. Something that I always preached with him, why he was so much more impressive than people thought, is running backs that you can't take contact head on as a running back, especially at the NFL level. That you're going to deteriorate really quickly. You see the really great running backs throughout NFL history. They know how to take it almost off to the side. You don't take the full brunt of the hit. And it kind of goes hand in hand with contact balance too. But I think Jeremiyah Love does a great job of never taking the full brunt of a tackle. So that's something that helps him not only, as far as breaking tackles goes, but also in a longevity aspect. I think, obviously the hurdle is the fun part too, part of the athleticism too. You see this guy pull off a ridiculous hurdle every single game, at least. It's like he's 100% success rate on hurdles. But he's just an incredible athlete, good vision, excels in every part of a running back you would need to. He's also a damn good lead blocker because Notre Dame asks him to do that a good bit. And he's we'll go up there and put a nose in a linebacker's face pretty comfortably. But yeah, there's really nothing I can say that's negative about the guy, and I'm just already pretty bullish on him.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. He's a crazy explosive athlete, and you see that in the hurdles. You see that in, when he's running, even on these longer runs, you see it feels like he's always accelerating, kind of like you mentioned, where it's like he's never really getting caught or slowing down unless he's in wide open space. But I mean, it just feels like he's always going. He's always very willing. He's going to do whatever you ask him to do. I think Notre Dame uses him and doing a lot of different things in that offense. Though I agree with you 100%. I wish it was more balanced. I wish he wasn't a true runner for them. I wish he would be using some different alignments or different just usages and roles in that offense. So I'm excited to see what they do with him this year. The big thing that I think is going to be the big sticking point in the spring is going to be his age. He's a very young player with already a year under his belt. So he's going to be a 2-year player coming out. I think he's going to be coming out under 21 still, or right around 21. I can't remember off the top of my head, but anyway, super young player, super explosive player. And like you talk about cornering with your running backs, and I like always talking about kind of what we value in some of these guys, some of these positions as we go through this, because as we've talked about before, we value very different things, but we always get to the same answer. And I think it's just how we find kind of these guys that are just scheme transcendent. But kind of talking about scheme, wide zone, you're letting these guys cut. Like we talked about, like the Caleb Johnsons of the world, where you're going to let them kind of stretch stuff out and then find the crease. Where I feel like Jeremiyah Love is a better running back when you're able to get him in a gap scheme and just let him go downhill. But like you said, I mean, you let him on the perimeter, you let him. He has great vision. He'll find lanes, whether it's a zone scheme or he's trying to work his way through the second level. I feel like he can do it all. I just love how downhill he can be as a runner. I love the contact balance, something that I really value in my running backs, and again, the versatility. I think he's a very willing blocker, whether a lead blocker, like you said, or in pass protection. Yep. He has one of those players where it's just get the ball in his hands and let's just see what happens. Like if you get him out in space in the perimeter in the passing game, it's gonna go well for you. I just feel like he could be another high volume guy if you need him to be in your offense, kind of like what we were talking about with Gene T and what he's expected to do in Las Vegas. But yeah, overall, just love the player. Excited to see what he's going to be able to do for Notre Dame this year. They should be, competitive again. They always are. So it's always fun to see him get some quality reps against quality competition and really just get that resume built up. But transitioning, I want to hear your thoughts on Penn State running back Nick Singleton.
Yeah, so Singleton, he's a guy that I was pretty high on him last year. He was a top 5 guy, top 5 running back for me in last year's class. And then when he came back, running back through his 24 tape, I actually ended up a little bit lower on him this time around than I did the first time. And I think it's for the nitpicky reasons that I say nitpicky. I mean, to me, they aren't, because there's something that's very, very valuable to me and things that I care about. I think that the two things that because the change of direction ability or the cornering ability, like I said earlier, is something that I don't see a lot of people talk about, that I think is very valuable. But everybody talks about vision, right? And that is ultimately not my number one. Like if you don't have eyes, you're not going to succeed at the NFL level, ultimately, in my opinion, when it comes to evaluating running backs. And I think I wouldn't call Singleton's vision bad necessarily. But I do think there's a pretty consistent down-to-down basis where he will, especially cutbacks, he kind of gets blind to his cutbacks. And just general, I think his eyes are a little bit slower than they should be. So that worries me a little bit. And to me, he's incredibly stiff. The hips, you can tell he does not corner well. He loses a lot of his speed and momentum when you ask him to corner, especially on the boundary. And that's something that, again, that's going to be a hang up for me. But you see these guys like Pacheco is the one everybody always points to, right? Where they say he runs like he's angry at the ground. You talk about it with quarterbacks, like natural throwers of the football. They're just like that for running backs. There's natural runners, guys you can see that are comfortable running, like they have a natural cadence almost when they run. And then for as many of those, you'll see very unnatural runners too, like an Isaiah Pacheco or like a Nicholas Singleton. To me, I think he's a guy that just looks very uncomfortable when he runs. And again, it sounds stupid to say almost out loud, but it's just kind of a thing, like a gut feel when you see a guy on tape. I think it goes hand in hand with how kind of stiff and tight he is too. That I think, if you want a guy that can only go north-south, Singleton is awesome. Like he's got probably mid 4.3 speed. He's incredibly explosive when talking like in a straight line aspect. You never see him get caught from behind. Like he's a top end athlete when it comes to north-south. He's just not a guy you want moving laterally to me. So that's, a hang up I have with him, but he's still my number 2 in this class. I think he's still got a lot of things that are really fun. Like I think he's probably one of the better receivers, if not the best receiver out of this whole group. I think he's a guy that have a pretty fleshed out route tree. Penn State uses him a lot. I think he's a guy that's consistently separated against man coverage. He's got good hands. And watching him, he's an awesome third down back. Watching him in pass protection is art. He is still a part of that group from last year where it was just like we had every running back in last year's class was a great pass protector. And of course, he ended up being in this year's class, but he is really kind of your teach tape in pass protection. Like he's got a great base, incredibly strong punch. He doesn't throw his body into guys. He punches first. Really strong lower body too. He's an awesome pass protector. He's a guy you can have on third down. Again, scheme transcendent as far as third down back goes. I think that's kind of my elevator pitch with him too, where it's just great straight line north to south athlete. Not a guy you want moving laterally, but also really, really fun on third downs. So he's a mid day 2 guy to me right now. Still my 2 in this class, but I'm also just generally lower on this running back class currently. But yeah, there's some really fun things, and there's some things that I'm a little bit worried about.
I think Nick Singleton falls into the category of like my quarterback evaluating, where I feel like he's a player that I really like watching. I really like what he puts on tape, but he's just not going to be. I feel like he's just not built to be a bell cow type guy, right? He's not going to be like an RB1 in a room. He can be like an RB1A or a 1B, but I don't think he's going to be a bell cow in the NFL. Even though the NFL's moving way away from that anyway. But watching his film, it's almost like I've always said. Film's good when it's boring, depending on the position. And I feel like running back's position where Singleton's film is pretty bland, in my opinion, where I feel like he's above average in most categories. Like, I feel like you can say he's an above average running back for sure, like undoubtedly. But overall, he's not really going to wow you in any facet of his game. However, he's going to be more consistent across the board and be able to do everything, again, above average, but he's just not going to flash anywhere. So you're going to have running backs that are going to be more explosive. You're going to have running backs that are going to be, stronger or more physical or, just quicker. Like you can beat him out in one category, 2 categories, but overall he's just a great solid back. That's why I think he'll have a long NFL career. I just think it's not going to be hard for people to convince themselves that there are running backs in this class that are going to beat him out over the long term. That's why I wanted to get him in early, because I just feel like he's going to be a guy for me that's probably going to, he'll have his roller coaster throughout the cycle as everyone does. I think he's going to test well. I think him and Love are going to be some of the better testers of this group. Oh, yeah. When it comes to Indy. And he'll get a little more steam coming, at the back end of the cycle, in my opinion. I think he'll kind of fall off during the season, personally. But overall, like I said, I'm a big fan of his game just because he's, again, another very willing running back. He'll do whatever. He can do whatever. He's just not going to flash. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to have a running back that's kind of like I talk about with quarterbacks. He's not going to break your offense. He's only going to help you get to where you're trying to go. And I do feel like he's scheme transcendent, not in the crazy, he can do anything type way, but he's going to be able to fit, like you said, and kind of whatever scheme you put him in, he's going to be able to make it work. And that's why he's going to grade high for me, because it's hard for me to find flaws in his game, but there's just nothing that's crazy exciting. So he's not going to, I feel like he is a lower ceiling type guy just because I don't know where you really improve his game. He's not going to be like, I think he can get a little more fluid as a runner, like you brought up. I think he is very stiff personally, but I don't think that matters, to be honest. I know there's like you already talked about this a little bit, but when you're watching it, you just got to trust your gut when you're watching film sometimes, and just, oh, wow, it looks like it's tough for him to run, or it looks like it's tough for him to cut. But the way he plays, he's just not that type of guy. Like, he's a guy that's going to be okay grinding out 46-yard gains, and he's just going to be able to settle into that role. And I'm not looking for him to, necessarily, bang out multiple explosive plays a game, even though I think you want that out of every player. But he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be able to rely on late downs, and a guy that I'm going to be able to have on the field for every down if I need to. And again, it's a guy that's just a weird spot for me because I didn't love his tape, but I like what he can do. So it's a fun prospect, and I think he's a perfect fit for Penn State because I think that's what Penn State does really well is they just get guys that are just above average football players, but they're not stars. I mean, we had that same conversation about kind of a Drew Aller. I feel like I've had that conversation about multiple Penn State offensive linemen. I mean, Penn State really brings it with some of their defenders, but if you look at their offense over the years, I mean, yeah, you have Saquon's come through, but overall, you have a lot of guys that are just good football players, and I'm not opposed to saying I'm higher than a consensus on a good football player. So that's going to be where he lands for me, probably.
I think Tyler Warren fits that bill too, like
100%.
Too. I think I was one of the people that ended up being lower on. It's weird. I called myself lower on Tyler Warren the whole cycle, but it's not because I thought he was a bad player. I just didn't think he was a blue chip tight end like people were trying to force him to be. Where you can just call a good player. Not everybody has to be a superstar. Just because you didn't have a blue chip tight end in last year's class didn't mean we had to force him to be that. Because I think he was just a solid high floor good tight end. It's a great, like Drew Shelton too in this class. We talked about him on your cameo on my draft channel over at NFL Trading Room, where Drew Shelton is just incredibly average at a lot of that stuff. So that's a good point. Across their offense, they do just have a tendency to pump out just in high floor good football players.
I feel like so many people take that as such a negative, where they're like, oh, the film was boring, or yeah, he's a good football player. But I feel like, when you're going through a draft process and like you and I emphasize, at least for 100% me, but the shadow team stuff, right? I'm not looking for these big superstar hits out of all my picks because that's just not realistic. Yeah. And I'd rather, especially with first round picks or day 2 picks, even if I can keep stacking good football players throughout a draft, I'm going to feel a lot better about that draft at the end of the day. Even though, there's going to be players that you grab or people might say it's a reach or they might say it's not great value, but then, over the long run, that player is just a good football player and he's going to last a lot longer than some of these players that burn out or they have too high of a ceiling or too high of a bar to meet, and it takes them a little bit of a while to get settled in. Where some of these guys they're plug and play, but not in the sense that they're a plug and play, day 1 top 5 guy on the roster, but they're a plug and play guy that you can get in there and they can play good football for you. And that's where I think that's really where my draft crushes come from, is these guys that are just good football players. And like I said, I'm okay liking good football players. I'm okay drafting good football players, and that's where. I'll always come back to being a high floor guy. I think Nick Singleton's got a good floor. I just worry about what the ceiling looks like because, like you say, he's not really a natural athlete, but he's a good football player. So, but I just think that's such a big, it's so underrated in the evaluation process. Just, people always looking for the next big hitter or the next gem, or, just go watch football and go find good football players. If you want to find good football players, go turn on Penn State tape. Year after year, you're not going to find guys that you're like, oh, that guy's a bona fide top 5 pick, most years out of Penn State's offense. But what you will find, you're going to find a couple guys a year that are going to be like, oh, they're pushing for a top 15 spot potentially, or a top 3 spot at their position. They got a few first rounders over there all the time. Some of them slide just because they're good football players. They don't have that ceiling necessarily, but they're good football players. So. But those are the running backs that we're covering. Any final thoughts on just the running backs, or even in relation to the running backs that you've already watched outside of these two?
Just like what you were saying, I think that's just kind of going to be a theme of this running back class as a whole. Like Mekhi Hughes too is a guy that Tulane transferred to now Oregon. Fits that bill exactly too. Where I think he's a guy that's not super flashy or explosive or going to be the highest ceiling guy in the world, but he's just a good football player. And I think if you were looking for your home run hitters and your like super flashy explosive running backs, that was last year. So this year it's just going to be, it's a lower talent class as a whole to me right now is what it looks like. Again, it's early in the process. A lot of that can change. We'll have guys show up in the middle of the season, but right now I think that's just kind of be the theme of this year's class is you're just going to get guys in late day 2 and early day 3 that are just solid contributors. But I'd be surprised if we see any Hall of Famers, come out of this running back class, at least with what I've watched so far.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. It's almost like, last year you needed to find your 1A, the guy that's going to be the face of your running back room, and this year you find the 1B who's going to take some of the workload off of his shoulders and still be effective for your offense. And so I think it's a great, if you have that perspective going into this running back class, I think you'll find a lot of guys that you like. But if you're looking for the Jainties and the Hamptons and all these top level guys, I just don't think you're going to find it this year. That doesn't mean there's not good running backs. And Jeremiah Love's a dog. So I mean, if you want to find that one guy,
all of that is excluding Jeremiah Love. Love is he rocks.
Love is the guy in this class, and it's not necessarily
it's Love and then a crater. So I mean,
you and I mean, we've talked about it. We've been trying to find kind of that number 2 that's going to push for the Jeremiah Love spot. I think it's going to be one of the things in my notebook that I'm looking for every Saturday as I watch the college football season. Just waiting for a running back to really push for that, a true 2 spot. To kind of settle in with that tier 1 with Jeremiah Love. But let's talk some big boys. Being the certified trench guy that everyone tells me that I am, we got to talk some big boys if I'm leading the episode. But we're not talking offensive line this week because, like I said, I'm still trying to find my offensive line gems. I have a couple, projects in the making, couple ideas in the making that I'm, trying to just finish grading them out before I start plastering their name everywhere as my guys in the summer scouting series. But let's talk some D-line because this D-line class is pretty fun, especially on the interior. I'm guilty of loving interior defensive linemen a lot more than edge players because I just feel like edge players are so misunderstood and people just get so, hung up on, I want this athletic, bendy, XYZ. Does he have a bag? And I'm like, no, you know what I like watching? I like watching these interior guys that are just, they're going to come out here and they're going to be good football players. They're going to be disruptive. They're going to be able to displace offensive linemen. They're going to have good hands. They're going to be hard to block. They're going to be slippery. And I think I'd use all of those words when describing Caleb Banks, and you're the one that put me on to Caleb Banks. I had him a little lower on my watch list, and you were like, no, you need to watch him. I think you sent me probably 100 text messages in one day about Caleb Banks, and I couldn't get enough of it. So I watched him immediately that night, and so I got to let you take the lead on this one.
Yep. I think he was actively subtweeting me with that whole edge rant, by the way. That was kind of my whole shtick. But you know what? When there is great interior play, I can appreciate it just as much as the next guy. I got to be honest, too. It's another thing. I hate to just be a downer on this class as a whole. I feel like I'm just being negative nonstop when I talk about this thing. But overall, I was also pretty unimpressed with the interior defensive line class as a whole. I think there were some fun names, some guys that could take a jump. But there's 3 guys that I'm comfortable saying, hey, these are all going to be really high picks next year. And Caleb Banks certainly leads that group. I think it's kind of a hot take at this point to say Caleb Banks over Peter Woods, who's kind of been the hot name for the number 1 overall prospect so far. Not to put down Woods at all. He's still a top 10 player for me. I like him a lot. But I think Banks is just outstanding. I think Caleb Banks is certainly a blue chip guy to me right now. There's not anything I could point to that I would say is a weakness in his game. I think he excels in really every facet you want him to as both a pass rusher and a run defender. The comp I mentioned to you, and I've said a couple of times before, is that, we talked about when watching Walter Nolan last year. When you watched his LSU game, for example, he looked like the greatest player of all time. And then you would watch 3 games where he, the Florida game, or I think Florida was one of the good ones. But you'd watch 3 games and he would disappear. He's a guy that looks like day 3 UDFA tape. So it was just incredibly spotty. I think Caleb Banks is just Walter Nolan when he was on, but all the time. I think he is a ridiculously good athlete for 6'5", 330. The twitch this guy has at 330 pounds, and I think he kind of looks heavier than that on film too. Is really unbelievable. He just floats around the field. I think for being a guy at 6'5", he's got awesome leverage on the interior too. He's got ridiculously violent hands. I mean, he's just looking to tear guys' throats out on every single rep. I think he tends to lean towards speed on the interior. He likes to win with speed more on the interior, but he's got plenty of power in his bag. That's just typically not his first kind of go-to in his plan. But I think he's got every way you could possibly want to win in his bag. I think he's a great hand fighter too when he needs to be. He can win a bar fight down in the trenches. I think he's got a great stack and shed as a run defender. His anchor as a run defender is awesome. You don't ever see him get washed out on the interior. I think the only gripe I have with him as a run defender is just that he'll win. It was like what David Walker would do as a pass rusher last year, where he would come in and win so fast that you would come in kind of too hot and out of control and end up overrunning the play. So I think I'd like to see him get a little bit more disciplined as a run defender, but it's just because he's winning too fast as a run defender. I think he's just that dominant. His hand usage is that good. He's that refined already. I think he knifes through double because you see, again, we mentioned too, you're watching football games. You watch who are the offenses scared of, right? And I think it's pretty evidently clear they're scared of Caleb Banks because he's double teamed all the time. As a run defender,
triple teamed in the run game at times.
Oh yeah,
which is crazy.
and he's knifing through double and triple team.
Yeah, it's insane.
Anchor's not moving. He's constantly slipping through them. He's just a guy that's not really phased by that. He's got an awesome swim move too, which is kind of a lost art nowadays. He's got a wicked swim move. And I think he's just a guy that really has every way you could possibly want an interior pass rusher to win, while also being an elite run defender. But I think he's a guy that's potentially like first overall pick worthy to me.
Yeah, no, Caleb Banks, like the tape, it just felt like every single rep, like you just started getting excited for. Like I got halfway through probably the second game of the season, and then like I was starting to just get excited every time the next clip loaded up. I was like, okay, well let's see what how he's gonna wreck it this time. Let's see what he's gonna get after it this time. And that's, I think you really hit it on the head, and I mentioned to a couple people already. But being the guy that was lower on Walter Nolan last year, I feel like Caleb Banks is what people were trying to convince me Walter Nolan was.
Yes, exactly. I have Nolan like 44 on my board last year.
I 100% agree with that take, because I watched Nolan's tape, and it was just, I saw the flashes, like I got it. Like I understood, like, yeah, if you watch the highlight reel, I understand why you like Walter Nolan. But if you watch the body of work, like you said, he vanishes. And I always emphasize when I'm watching trench players, always. But who, like you said, who is the offense scared of on their defensive line? And it was never really Walter Nolan. I mean, they would slide him every now and then, or they double him every now and then, but they knew what they were going to get out of him. But Caleb Banks is commanding double team, triple teams. They always slide to him. They'll adjust protections to him. Like, it's just, he is the point of emphasis on that defensive front, and there's a reason for it. Even though he wears number 88, he's an absolute menace on that defensive
line. That's an awesome D-line number. Don't do that. That's an awesome D-line number.
Yeah, I gotta love the big boy understanding what he's working with and getting the biggest number possible. All right, I appreciate that. But no, I 100% agree. I think he's got great power in his hands, great shedding ability. I hate talking about bag with defensive linemen. I think it's kind of overhyped in the space, so I try not to bring it up. But it feels like he can bust out any single move that you want to see. If you want to see a guy that has a good swim move, it's Caleb Banks. If you want to see a guy that has a great, like you said, stack and shed, where he's able to just rip offensive linemen to the ground, and he's doing that in double teams. He'll anchor on a double team, rip down the guard, and then rip underneath the center and be staring the running back square in the face. And it's just insane to see what he can do. And that's, again, one of the things that I value most in my evaluation process, just, not necessarily bag, strength, whatever, but it's anchor. And then it's how hard is it for offensive linemen to just get hands on you? And just, he's so good, even if he's just chopping hands away or swiping, like it's hard for defensive linemen or offensive linemen to find a way to contact him, because not only does he have good hands, but he's great with working his pad height, great at getting skinny, working his moves. And it's just, again, it's just a clinic. Every game felt like a clinic for Caleb Banks, and it was just so fun to watch.
I don't think I've ever. Sorry, go ahead. Let me interrupt you.
I'm going to be irresponsibly high on Caleb Banks until he tells me, like, proves to me why I shouldn't be. So,
yeah, I'm not sure I've ever seen a single offensive lineman have a worse day than the Ole Miss center did when he had to block Caleb Banks. I mean, I
felt so bad.
He got whooped beat like a drum every single snap in that game, and they didn't give him much help that game either. And it was one of those singular better, like that game and the LSU game. I think I had almost 4 minutes of a cut up just between those two games alone. Like that LSU game, you want an elevator pitch on Caleb Banks? Go watch those two. That is first overall pick tape.
And I've got to say, like I went on this like D-line binge, like SEC D-line binge a couple weeks ago, and that Ole Miss center is actually not a bad football player. Like he kind of like piqued my interest every now and then. I wrote his number down. I was like, when I go on my offensive line, just sprint that I'm on right now, I want to like look him up and see if he's eligible, see what his situation is. But like he had some plays that flashed to me, and then like you said, like you turn on Caleb Banks, and you think this is the worst center in football. You think,
yeah.
And I've talked about it as well, but I feel like every defensive lineman in this class that I've watched so far that played him had their best day against LSU. And like we moved on from the class, but I'm just saying, if you want to kind of get a good litmus test of where this defensive line class is, if they have an LSU game, go watch that LSU game, because I think you're going to be very surprised with what you find, to be honest with you. But
that
that's
excludes Miles Frazier, by the way. He's still good.
Different conversation. Caleb Banks doesn't think Miles Frazier is that good.
Well,
just saying.
Yeah.
because Caleb Banks is very good. But I'm making an executive decision because I think we have a fun transitional piece that I want to talk about. I think you want to talk about, but I do want to talk about both these Clemson guys. But we'll start with Peter Woods because I want you to tell the people where you think he's going to play. Because again, I have him graded as an edge because PFF told me he's an edge. You watch the film, he's not an edge, but he plays it. He sure plays the hell out of it. That's all the positions I have listed right now were when I pulled the PFF board for the names that I have on my board. So I could have changed, but he was an edge when I pulled the name off the board. So
yeah, I mean, you see him listed as an edge. People talk about him like that sometimes. That's wild to me because he's not. Again, Clemson plays him that way, but he's not an NFL edge rusher. This guy is 320 pounds, or 315, 310 maybe at best.
But again, he plays the edge, and he does.
Oh yeah, I mean, Clemson is playing this guy as watch the Georgia game. They had him probably 70% of the Georgia game as a stand-up 5 tech. Like this dude had his hand in the dirt maybe 25% of that game,
and he's making it happen.
And he was making it work because he's that athletic at 315 whatever he is pounds. So yeah, Peter Woods is really right there with Caleb Banks. He's currently 7th for me, while Caleb Banks is 5 on my board. So. That is, they're very, very close to me. I think the major decider there for me was medicals. I've heard some concerning medicals thrown around with Peter Woods, but obviously we're so early in the process. I don't have any concrete details or anything like that. I'm sure we'll get more details on that during the spring next year. But as far as the tape goes, yeah, he's a 3 tech at the NFL level. Like this is not a guy that's going to play that stand-up edge rusher position that Clemson's playing at right now. At an NFL level or in an NFL system. That's just not what he's built for. But I mean, this guy is an elite 3 tech. Again, ridiculously twitched up athlete at that size. Again, another guy that wins with speed a lot on the interior, but also, wins with power just as consistently. He's a guy that kind of has an endless bag and win either way you want on the interior. Really good hands too, incredibly active, good hand fighter. I don't think he's quite the run defender that Caleb Banks is as far as anchor goes. I think you'll see him get washed out of the play a little bit more. But I do think his technique, the stack and shed, it's awesome with Peter Woods. He's a guy that's going to consistently, he just throws offensive linemen around like ragdolls. You would just like to see him kind of stay home a little bit more as an edge rusher. And he also kind of has the tendency to run himself out of a play like Caleb Banks does. But again, they have another year to go in college. And that's a pretty easy thing to coach out of a guy to me. But he's a guy that also gets incredible leverage. Like this guy, it's almost unbelievable how low he can get while being that athletic. Like he's so
he's freaky bendy for sure.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, for a guy to be that bendy at 315, like he's getting parallel to the ground on the interior. He's got a disgusting club move. He's got a really fun push-pull. Which again, we're talking about bag. It's kind of overrated. We can list moves all day, but it's just fun for me to note what moves guys really excel at. That's all. It's just hard not to love a good push pull. That's one of the most beautiful pass rush moves in football to me. That's why I love. Like Jalen Walker had a devastating push pull. I love watching him do that. But that's something he's really good at. Again, not really. There's nitpicky stuff I could bring up, but fundamentally, there's not really a flaw I see in Peter Woods' game. I think he's again just an elite athlete at his size, and a guy that would be a elite 3 tech, I think, at an NFL level. And assuming the medicals check out, I would also expect him to be a top 5, top 10 pick come next year.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to play him an edge, it's going to be off front defensive end. That's as much of an edge as you're going to get out of him. Like I was telling you, I can see him being like a BC gap flex guy, but he's not. He's not one of these twitchy, going to drop into coverage for you linebacker style edge players. He's a 3 to 5. Run/pass rusher, run defender/pass rusher. But I know the game's fun. My biggest frustration with him was just I want to see him be more of a power player. I think he shows a lot of great strength, but it just the way he wants to play, he wants to be a speed rusher. He wants to be that edge defender. He wants to be that athletic, twitchy, bendy edge player. But he's got all this power, like you said. Like the club is crazy. Like watch him come off the edge and club some of these tackles just out of the way, like they're not even a factor in his life, is insane. And just watching, again, the push-pull, watching him snap heads back and then just be able to toss offensive linemen out of the way is – he can do it with ease, but he just chooses not to. Like you said, he wants to emphasize I'm bendy. He wants to use that rip all the time. I think that's why he gets washed out in the run game because I think he plays very tall. because he's always just looking to be an athletic rusher. Right? He's always he's a stop the run on the way to the pass rusher guy, but he's focused on the quarterback all the time. But I didn't hate the game. I'm going to be a little lower on him than the consensus, I think, just because I do think there's flaws in his game. Not that any player is perfect, but I wish he would just do more of what he's good at, opposed to just trying to. It feels like he's just at a 5-on-5, camp every single game. Which, to his credit, he wins a lot of reps, and like you can't take that away from him. Like you turn on the film, you're gonna watch him win reps. The highlight, I posted a cut up of him on my TikTok and for my subscribers on X. But just watching him go through, it feels like he can win in a variety of ways, and you got to give him a lot of credit for that. But again, it's the pad height, it's the discipline. It's just, hey, relax a little bit, make more plays, be a more sound defender. He's going to go a long way, and I think he can get there. I think he can show that this season. I don't think he's a long ways away from being that, but he just didn't show me that last year. But not a player I hate. Fun transitional piece. I don't think he's an edge. You don't think he's an edge. If he's going to be an edge, it's going to be a type 5 for an odd front. So, but moving on, we'll talk about the position you like the most on the defensive line. That I'm bad at evaluating edges that are actual edges, because these guys that just want to run the hoop, for me as an offensive line guy, I'm like, okay, let him do that. If he wants to be bendy on the edge, that's fine, because you'll see some bad tackles in college football. You'll see some good highlight plays. But in my mind, a good NFL offensive lineman is going to shut you down if you're trying to run the hoop on them all the time, trying to be a speed guy. So those guys don't really pique my interest, but this guy is an absolute dog. Tell me about TJ Parker.
Oh, man, have I been waiting to talk about TJ Parker. Easily my favorite non-QB in this draft class. Currently number 4 on my big board. Man, he is just so much fun. So I try not to change my process based off of one miss or 1 year, because I think it's important to stay true to your process, to really have a larger sample size to know what you do wrong. But I think every once in a while you'll see a glaring issue that you need to fix. And for me, I think that was, again, it was valuing bend too much. It's that I still love watching a guy that can bend. Like I love Donovan Zaraki because he could get really, really low to the ground. But I think I've stopped using bend against guys who aren't bendy. Because I talked myself out of Jared Verse because he wasn't bendy. And it's stupid because that's not who Jared Verse was. He's not a bendy guy. And TJ Parker is a guy that's not a bendy guy. And I'm so glad I changed my process so that I can be as high on him as I feel like when I watch that film. I didn't know hand usage until I watched TJ Parker. I mean, this guy is hands. I would never want to see him in a street fight. I mean, it is ridiculous. I'm not sure I've ever seen an edge rusher be able to consistently pry an offensive tackle's hands off of their frame, but you see him do it at least three times per game. Like it's a thing he pulls out every single game. Again, while he may not be the bendiest guy in the world, he's still a great athlete for his size. I think he gets off the ball really well. The short area quickness is really impressive for his size. But again, along with the hand usage, like the most impressive thing to me is his motor. It is white hot all the time. You watch his entire season, I could almost guarantee you don't see a play he's ever given up on because they just aren't out there. He's chasing down screens from the backside constantly. Just never giving up on a play, and that goes kind of hand in hand with how relentless his hands are. Like that was the term I had underlined on every single game notes that I watched of him was just relentless in all caps every single game, because that's what he is. He just never gives up. He's always hungry. He's got a great chop too for guys that, it just goes along with how strong his hands are. He's got a really, really fun chop. I think you'd like to see him develop maybe a little bit more of a plan, come in a little bit more in control. I think he kind of can be kind of reckless and just kind of fly in a little bit too soon and out of control. But he, along with the hand usage, he's also got really good length. The arms are really long, which I think is something that's really, I'm not a measurements guy, but I think length is really, really important when it comes to edge rushers. So that's another thing that goes in his favor. He's got a really, really good set of power moves too. He's got a great long arm, a really solid bull rush. He's just a guy that's like, you got to be a good tackle to stop TJ Parker. There's no free wins against TJ Parker. It is, you're going to have to work your ass off every single rep against him all day. So he's a guy that I'm not sure I've seen anybody be higher on him than I am. My edge one, 4th overall on the board. I am a massive TJ Parker fan.
I had to go and check. My board doesn't count yet because it's still short, but I'm interested to see where he ends up when I get through grading some more of these edge guys because I'm interested to see. Because he's high. He's high on my board, really high on my board right now. He's one of my 3 first-round grades on my board right now. But I think you hit a lot of great points because, A, there's a difference between being a measurements guy and playing with length. And you can be both and you can be one or the other. And I think, it's something I try to emphasize every year when it comes to the arm length conversation, especially with offensive tackles and offensive linemen in general, because I feel like so many offensive linemen play with such good length, but they have short arms. And I feel like, playing long doesn't mean you have 4 foot long arms, 3 foot long arms. It just means how you understand leverage, you understand how to really maximize what God gave you. And I feel like TJ Parker and Jared Verse, I think Jared Verse had long arms, don't get me wrong, but I feel like when Jared Verse was playing football and rushing the edge, it looked like his arms were 60 inches long.
Yeah.
And I feel like TJ Parker, the hands and just the arm usage is why I emphasize to my guys so much. And why you see guys, like Dylan Fairchild and Froholt working with guys like Sean Strickland, where when you can really master hand fighting and just slowing that whole process down for you, it just helps you so much. And people I don't think you see that nuance that often. But TJ Parker's lever is just, I could watch it all day. The forklift is crazy. The forklift is insane because he'll be clamped up. He'll have an offensive tackle will have 2 hands on his chest because TJ Parker will open his chest up a lot. Which early on in his film, I was like, I hate that. But then you see you got 2 hands on his chest and he'll grab that outside hand or the inside hand and he will pry it off of his shoulder pad, lift it up, and then run through the offensive tackle. And that's where, I gave him a 10 out of 10, literally on my motor category grading system.
Parker doesn't hand out 10s. I've never seen him hand out 10s.
I don't give out 10s. I'll give out probably more 9s than I should, but I don't hand out 10s. And I literally, because you can't, TJ Parker is not going to be not a power rusher. He's not a finesse rusher. He's a good rusher, but I wouldn't put him in either category.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a high motor rusher. And that's where I think he gets so many wins, and that's why
that's translatable
100%. That's why that category means a lot, and that's why he's so high on my board right now. That's why he is one of those 3 first-round grades. Funny enough, I have 2 defensive linemen in that top 3 group. We talked about all 3 of our first-round grades today, but that's why he's up there, is because that motor is why he wins reps, and why, like you said, offensive tackles, you have to win. You have to earn every single win you're going to get against him because it's down after down after down after down. The feet don't stop. He doesn't stop working his hands. He doesn't stop looking for an opportunity to beat you. And he's a guy that kind of like you mentioned, he's not bendy. I wouldn't say he has a bag like people talk about. Like he's not out here like Latu. But when you just run your feet consistently, offensive linemen can't hang with that. They can't handle that well. Because again, offensive tackle is moving backwards. And so if you're able to just keep pressuring him, again, almost like a UFC fighter, where if you just keep pressuring, you're going to find your shot because you're just making the other guy uncomfortable. And he makes offensive tackles so uncomfortable because, again, he'll keep working you back. And he's not a guy that's going to run the hoop and bend it. And so people are going to knock him for that. He's not a guy that's going to, again, be a power or speed guy. So he's going to get knocked for that, for not being, a great rusher. But everyone's going to have him extremely high on their board because he just wins. And like I think that's really the theme at the top of this class, which is why I wanted to pick the players that I did pick. But just good football players. He's a good football player. He's not going to, again, he's not the Latu who's going to be like, oh, wow, he can bust out, 14 different moves and he transitions into counters really smooth. Like he could be really choppy at times. He can be a little delayed. And like I said, he opens his chest up. And there's a lot of flaws in his pass rush game, but the motor just corrects it because he's not going to just try one move, try a counter, and get stopped. He's going to keep working, and he's okay, again, not being the biggest guy, but working through your chest because he'll get your hands off you. And when he, again, forklifts that hand off of his chest, he's going to keep that wrist control, and he's going to have that window open for him until he can make a move through it, or he can force the quarterback to move, and he can decide where he needs to go. And that's where TJ Parker is just a nightmare. Like watching TJ Parker on film as an offensive line coach in the ACC, there's ways you can handle a Peter Woods. I don't know what you tell your offensive tackles going into the game what to do with TJ Parker, because you really have to tell them, hey, you just aren't going to take any reps off today. You're going to hope that we run the ball at TJ Parker, 30 times today. But guess what? TJ Parker is also extremely slippery. And that's what I look for in my defensive lineman. Like I said earlier, it's motor and it's how hard are you to block. And it's not necessarily, I can swipe hands good. I have all these moves. But if I'm able to make it hard for the offensive line, make him strain. He doesn't have a great anchor, but when he keeps those feet moving, he just drives offensive linemen into a stalemate at that point of attack. And so, again, not like there's a lot of technical issues in his game, but the athleticism, the just football IQ, and the motor are going to take him extremely far. And he's going to be a top 5 pick. And if he's not, something crazy happened this season because he's, again, not refined at all. A technical nightmare, in my opinion, as a pass rusher or defensive lineman in general. I think he plays tall, all the things I've already said. But he makes up for it in motor and football IQ because he just knows how the game works. He knows how to find wins, and that's why he's so fun to watch. Again, both of us, I just not enough to say about TJ Parker. Not enough.
Oh yeah, I didn't even touch him on his run defender. I just only talked about him as a pass rusher.
No, I know that's the thing. Is there's so much in his game.
I know.
Like I could probably have a whole hour-long episode talking about TJ Parker. Maybe we'll have to do a little film breakdown of TJ Parker at some point.
Oh, that would be outstanding.
It's such a I think he really embodies what I look for out of defensive linemen. And it just happens that he's a top guy in this class. But this guy, this profile, not being a TJ Parker, probably flops in a lot of evaluators' eyes in every other class. But it's just he has the motor, but he also pairs the crazy athleticism with it. It's just such a beautiful combo when you have a guy that actually knows how to win, knows the game of football, and then gets that freaky athleticism that's going to be fun to watch in Indy.
Yeah, you mentioned the kind of you see the anchor get better as a run defender, but you see we talked about his length and how long he plays, how well that translates to him as a run defender too. I think he's a guy that stacks and sheds really well on the edge, just plays really long in the run. And he's everything you mentioned with his feet and everything. No part of him stops moving. He's just constant buzzing.
Hands, feet, it's just going.
He's the Energizer Bunny. He constantly is he's a constant state of motion. You're never going to nail that guy down. It's so fun to watch.
I'm telling you, I was an offensive line coach. This guy is a nightmare because there's just your offensive tackle has to go for a full 8 seconds every rep to just try and stalemate this guy, because if you stop your feet, his feet aren't stopping. If you stop your hands, his hands aren't stopping. And they don't necessarily work together. They're independent. He separates his body and works independently. And it's just the spatial awareness, just the self-awareness, the understanding of how my body works, how I can work, and how I can manipulate these offensive line. It's just a clinic. Technically a disaster, but if you want to show your players how to play, show them TJ Parker. It's kind of it's like the Trent Williams theory that I always talk about, where you're never going to turn on Trent Williams tape and say, hey, left tackle, go play like Trent Williams, because he's a terrible technical player. Just does whatever he wants to do out there because he's a freak athlete. He's just an incredible athletic offensive lineman. But when you just want to tell a guy, hey, this is what I want to see out of you in a game, this is the kind of the energy I want you to bring, what I want your tape to look like, you're going to turn on Trent Williams. If I'm talking to my defensive ends and my edge players, and I'm saying this is the vibe I want you to have on your highlight tape, on your film, it's TJ Parker, because it's just what stands out to you is the high motor. And that's why everyone's going to love him, because you're going to get wins with that high motor. The technique will come. You can get developed. That's where I say the I can fix him conversation is good and bad. In this case, it's good because he already has the mental side of it, and that's the part that's hard.
This is the right kind of projection right here.
This is the right kind of high ceiling player because the floor is high because he's got it in the head. So I don't know. I could talk about TJ Parker probably all day, and I think we're gonna have to do a film breakdown because I'd love to watch it. But our final good football player, because we're moving from first 5 to first 6. But one of the first players that I watched of my own, desire outside of the guys that, the schools I had to watch, first thing first this cycle. Jaden Greathouse is a blast to watch at receiver for Notre Dame, man. Good route runner, another high motor player that he'll make it happen. He's not going to be crazy explosive. He's not going to be crazy physical. He's not going to be, but I think he can become that. And I haven't looked up any height, weight, and documented it. I just kind of glanced at it I wonder where this guy's at. This is what I feel like he is. I'll pull him up, look at it, move on. But I couldn't tell you if he's a slot receiver, an X receiver, a Z receiver. I feel like he can move him across the board. He can be an effective route runner. He can go win 50-50 balls. He's not going to do it consistently, but he can. And so I feel like really Jaden Greathouse is like clay. You can make Jaden Greathouse whatever receiver you want to make him, because he's a good football player. You can make him a jump ball guy if you just work on that with him a little bit. You can make him an explosive slot for you if you work on him with that a little bit. But I think he's a ready-made Z, in my opinion, because crisp route runner, knows how to find space and knows how to get separation. And those, like, as dumb as it sounds, that's what I look for in my receivers. Everyone's always looking for, all these advanced analytics or the testing or
no, it's just who separates. That's what makes
whatever you want.
That's
if you can beat zone because you have eyeballs in your head and you can separate in man, I'm good. And he does both of those extremely well. So I'll let you talk about some Jaden Greathouse a little bit because, like I said, I haven't really talked to you about him a lot because I like your receiver takes a lot more than mine. I feel like I know how to watch receivers, but I feel like you really break it down a lot better than I do. So teach the people why Jaden Greathouse is a first-round receiver.
It's funny. I feel like, over the past year that I've gotten kind of bigger in my draft coverage, I've kind of turned out to be a receiver guy when I break these down, which is funny because I really don't enjoy watching receivers all that much. I kind of just like it's kind of a drone watching boundary guys to me. But like, man, you texted me early on in the process saying you think Greathouse would be my guy. And it took me forever to get to him until I didn't watch him until we did this episode. And I am so glad I finally did, and you nailed it. So clearly, my type in receivers. He is 11th on my board right now. He's a first-round grade for me. I think Greathouse is outstanding. I think the point you mentioned where you think you don't know where he goes. Honestly, I think almost all the time that's a bad thing for players. I think with receivers it's a good thing because it screams role versatility when you don't know where to put a guy. Because for example, I'll go to say I'm hard on receivers. Like I am a guy, I'm extremely picky when it comes to receivers. I'm not going to settle. I was really upset with a lot of last year's class for people. I was way off consensus receiver wise last year. And it's just, again, because the only thing I care about is can you separate? Because to me, I just don't really, nothing else matters if you can't as a receiver. Sure, you can be a great jump ball guy like Ted McMillan. But, would you rather have, what's your success rate? They call it a 50-50 ball for a reason, Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to lose those. There's no chance of losing when a guy's wide open. So go get the guy who can separate and get wide open on a consistent basis rather than the guy where you have to throw it at a defender to have a chance. Just rant about my general receiver philosophy right there before I actually dive into the player.
No, I love it. I love it though, because it's like, I mean, that's why I have my 2 first-round pick receivers that are sitting on my shadow team's wide receiver room are Malik Neighbors and JSN because what did they do? What did they do consistently every rep, every game? Separate. If you can separate, you make your quarterback's job a lot easier. And that's like, again, your job as a receiver is not to go catch 50-50 touchdowns and go get, these great, I'm just going to hook a corner off the line of scrimmage. It's go sit in space, go make space and make your quarterback look good. And if Jaden Greathouse does anything, it is make Riley Leonard, who I loved watching but hated grading, look good. And he does it.
Yep. I think I would agree with you that I think he works best at Z, but I think he's a guy that you play wherever you need it as a receiver. I think he's got a lot of versatility. You can play him in the slot. You can play him on the outside. People are going to call him a slot receiver because he played primarily slot, kind of only slot at Notre Dame. People did it with Justin Jefferson coming out because he was only played in the slot. But if you actually watch the guy, you can tell what matters in an outside receiver, and he does that from the slot. This guy, the few press reps you did see, nobody has a shot of pressing Jaden Greathouse. And that's, again, to me, that's all I care about. If you can beat press, you can play on the boundary. It's all that matters to me. And a little bit of athleticism, but he's got no athletic limitations. Greathouse is an awesome athlete. But yeah, incredible separator against both man and zone. Like you mentioned, he's got great zone eyes. He knows where to settle. He's a QB's friend in that way. But one-on-one man coverage just has no shot with Jaden Greathouse. I mean, he is an elite separator. The hips are super efficient. He's sinking his hips and stop routes. Very, very efficient. And out of his breaks, he doesn't waste any movement. Gets from top speed to zero really, really quickly. I think he's got really, really sudden out of his breaks too. That's the thing that's very, very important as a separator, especially against man coverage, is can you be sudden when you break? I think he's great at that. The head fakes were nice that when he pulled them out. I thought that was really impressive. I think he could be, if we're going to nitpick, he could be a slightly better salesman at the top of his stems, but overall, still, I really have no gripes of him as a separator. The footwork is incredible. I think the release package and the ability to get off the line of scrimmage were lethal. That's why I have so much faith on him playing on the boundary if you needed him to. And on top of being that great of a separator, He's also just like awesome at the catch point. Like he's what 6'1", 6'2", 200-ish, not the biggest guy in the world, but he plays a hell of a lot bigger than he is. He's incredibly physical at the catch point. He's a guy that will go up and fight against contact. He'll fight to put himself in an advantageous spot at the catch point. He will win. He will go fight to win your balls at the catch point. And if you like that's just an added bonus to me with the separator. Like again, Kyle Williams was my guy that I preached all of last year. And he sucked at the catch point flat out. Like he was flimsy at the catch point. And he was still a guy that I preached just because he was that good of a separator. I can forgive if you're bad at the catch point if you get open. But I don't have to with Greathouse because he's great as a separator. He gets open consistently while also being fun at the catch point. And that's before you even talk about what he is with the ball in his hands. I mean, this guy's a yak threat all day. Incredibly elusive. I think he's got good contact balance. He's quick. He's twitchy. Accelerates really, really quickly. So this is a guy you can involve. He's just such a Swiss Army knife as far as he is scheme transcendent. You could put this guy any offense. He can play whatever role you need him to. There's really no limitation to his game where I think he couldn't play whatever role you want him to. He can be a gadget guy. He can be an F. He can be an X. He can be a Z. There's just really there's no limitation on his game to me. I'm in the middle of my receiver rankings right now. I've still got a lot of guys to watch, so I can't give you like what receiver number he is for me right now. But I'd be incredibly surprised if he falls out of the top 2 or 3. And honestly, I'd be surprised if he's not 1 at this rate. I really, really like him.
Yeah, I think what people need to remember is Notre Dame's a very physical team. They get very large receivers to play on the perimeter for them. So a guy built like Greathouse is going to be a slot receiver for them. And that's where, again, when you're evaluating, don't just take the tape for what it is at face value. Go in there and know what you're watching for, and then try and watch players with a blank, like as a blank canvas. Like, what does this player do well? What does he not do well? And that's how you find these guys. That's how I know, Neighbors was no secret. JSN was no secret. Some of these top guys aren't secrets. I don't think Greathouse will be a secret by the time we get to the, season. However, when you watch his tape, you can you see that he just is successful. He finds ways to win. And that's, if you can't tell, that's like my MO when I'm evaluating any player. If you find ways to win, I can make that work. I can work around that. I can make that happen. So, but I was glad you brought that up because I think the most underrated, and it will be throughout the entire process, and it will be because I don't think he's going to test great. He's not going to measure great in Indy, but I think the most underrated part of his game is just after the catchability, because like we talked about, he makes it easy. He gives himself great opportunity because he's able to separate extremely well. But once he gets the ball in his hands, like it's a whole new ball game. He's extremely slippery.
Man, that's great contact balance. Screen against Ohio State.
Crazy.
In the national championship. I mean, come on, dude. Watch that play. That's all you need to see about him as a yak threat.
And it's funny because he's got plays like that probably in every other game minimum, where it's just he's catching it in a crowd, downfield.
And he wasn't very productive.
Somehow slips out of it and just gets explosive plays. That's where I need to look more into the data because I never do that in the summer. But I'd be very interested to know what his yards per route run were, because the numbers aren't great, and I think it's just a Notre Dame issue, not a Greathouse issue. Exactly. But I just there's times, and this is because I'm a Bengals fan, not because I'm comparing him to this player. Because as you and I have talked about, Drew, and people don't focus on this, but in my opinion, comps are stylistic. Like if you're comparing a player to a player, I'm not saying you're on the same talent level. I'm saying when you play, you remind me of this player. And being a Bengals fan, Greathouse always reminds me, like when I'm watching through the explosive plays, it's Jamar Chase, because I can catch the ball in a crowd, I can get out of the crowd, and I can get moving. I can separate extremely well and create my own space and then make it happen after the catch. And it's just like the consistency of doing that. And it's like, you almost count on it. And there's times where, he'll catch the ball, or, the first guy will bring him down, or he's not able to really slip out of the group. And it almost feels like underwhelming after a certain point, because you just start expecting it. And that's just, I think, the biggest thing for me with Greathouse. But yeah, these are like the 6 out of the 6 guys we just talked about. I have 5 of them in my top 6 right now, but the board is shallow still. But just wanted to emphasize that as I'm watching through, it's all about good football players. The ceiling is great. Floor is great. Show me that you know how to win on a consistent basis. Show me that you know what you're doing. When you're an offensive player, show me you know what you're doing with the ball in your hands. When you're a defensive player, show me you know how to win reps on a consistent basis in multiple different looks. They'll be a one-trick pony. I don't need you to have a quote-unquote bag as a pass rusher, as a defensive lineman, but it does help if you aren't just, hitting a rip every single rep and winning sometimes and not winning sometimes. Like, show me that you understand the game of football. And that's why, again, I love guys like TJ Parker. I love guys like Jeremiyah Love, because he has great vision and he can make it happen. And he understands that it's not always, looking to make 14 guys miss on a given play, or there's times where I just need to get out of bounds. There's times where I just need to avoid contact. There's times where it's smart to go down, I protect the ball. But there's times where I can really open it up and I can just show guys, that show fans, show evaluators that I am an athlete, that I am a dynamic football player. But Jeremiyah Love and Caleb Banks, I think, really embody what I'm looking for out of just solid first-round prospects. TJ Parker is probably the perfect example of a guy, of an I can fix him guy, where I'd call his floor very low, because I feel like if he gets into the NFL and has these technical flaws, it's gonna harm him, and it's gonna harm him early. But as I talked about, the motor just really brings that floor up for me. So technically the floor is low. Motor is going to really bump that up for me. And then the athletic ability and just the rawness of the prospect, that ceiling is sky high. So I think TJ Parker is just I wouldn't call him a boomer bust prospect, because I personally believe defensive linemen with high motors can never bust. They're going to be consistent football players, where even if they're journeymen that play on 18 NFL teams, they're going to be in the league for a long time, because they're going to win coaches over in camp every single year. And then, we talked about Nicholas Singleton, who I think has a lot to prove this upcoming season. I think he's a very above average running back. He's just a good football player for me right now. I'd like to see some flashes and kind of bump that ceiling up a little bit for me personally. And then Jaden Greathouse is just, like I talked about, I haven't watched a lot of, I think he might be one of like 2 receivers that I've watched so far, but I'd be impressed to see anyone really jump him by a significant margin. If he's not wide receiver 1, like you said, he's going to be in the top 3 most likely, and it's going to be tight. So, but overall, it's just a fun group of players. I'm excited to see who you bring to the table for our next episode. We'll have to talk about that for sure, because I don't even know where I'm going to take my film watching after this episode.
Me either. So.
This is where the fun really begins.
Exactly.
But just, as a quick reminder, thank you for watching. Of course, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to our Substack of the same name. It's Scout the Shadows, because I do like emphasizing shadow teams. I feel like I am just at this point preaching about shadow teams, but that's okay by me. I think it's a blast and I love doing it. And the reason I scout prospects is for my team. But we did get a Substack together. Both me and Drew are on it, posting articles. I'm pretty sure neither of us have posted one yet, but I'm going to be posting my first. We have an intro one. Don't worry, I did the intro, but I'm going to be posting my first scouting report, if that's what you want to call it. My first little blurb, my first thoughts on prospects starting either tonight or tomorrow. We'll see how the night goes. I know Drew's got a lot of great content coming up. I know Drew's got a lot of great content to plug, so I'll let you plug your stuff real quick, Drew, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. You can find pretty much everything I do right there at Iron City Film on Twitter or X. Got everything linked on there. Everything I post goes on there. I doing a lot of Titans writing over there at Titansize.com. Fan site is Titans coverage team. A lot of nerdy stuff there. A lot of Titans draft film breakdowns right now, because we're kind of in the dead zone. I figured it's time to break out the draft class, really dive deep into those guys. I had a great one on Chimray DK come out. I'm really proud of that one recently. It's a fun read.
Great content.
So that's always fun. Again, as soon as I stop drowning for the first time in the past couple months, I will be sure to start draft writing on the Substack. I promise I'll do that soon. Nice to have a place to put my draft writing for sure too, because I'm kind of like in limbo right now as far as draft content goes. But that's fun. Parker was on my draft channel, NFL Trading Room, a couple weeks ago, I guess now. I've lost complete track of time, but he's on there. We broke down the offensive
I have no idea, to be honest with you.
I couldn't tell you either. Bring down offensive tackles, doing some summer scouting stuff over there too. Kind of all over the place, but yeah, you can find everything linked on my Twitter, X, whatever it is. But stretched pretty thin across a couple places, but a lot of fun stuff right now.
For sure. And like I mentioned before, and I'll keep mentioning on the Substack, it's us independently together. So we're going to have crossover articles. We're going to have crossover evaluations, but that's because we want you guys to see that, you can get to the same conclusion and you can have different, perspectives on guys. You can be polar opposite on guys, but for the same reasons. Like there's stuff that Drew loves about certain prospects that I hate. That doesn't mean either of us are right or wrong, but we really just want to be transparent and show you the two different veins that you can really go down, and that there's more than one perspective. And just because you don't agree with consensus, or just because you don't agree with us or your friends or whatever it might be, doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you have a different eye. You just prefer different things. And football is a fun game because of that. So I always want to get ahead of it. There is going to be, mirrored content on the Substack, but that's okay because my content's going to be probably pretty ugly anyway because I hate formatting things. So it's just going to be my ramblings, as pretty as I care to make it. I'm sure, you'll be a lot more professional in that aspect, but of course, go follow me on X as well at ParkerBlake60. You can also subscribe to me there. I've been terrible about posting for my subscribers, and I apologize to all of them. And I think I'm also shadow banned ? Because I get DMs all the time that my subscription content isn't going to people's feeds. So I do post there for those people, and I appreciate all of those people because you make it possible for me to spend the time that I do on this stuff. But I'm going to start getting back to posting cut-ups so you can watch along with me. Like I like to say, try to post cut-ups of the players that I'm watching that I think are worth taking note of, and that way you can follow along with me and build a little big board, watch the players that I'm watching, obviously, and kind of just see the upside to all these guys. I'm not posting, just overall clips. I'm just posting little highlight cut-ups. But feel free to subscribe there. Like I said, we'll be posting my little ramblings about prospects on the Substack. But thank you all for tuning in and, again, subscribing, notifications on. Let us email you our Substack articles whenever those decide to get posted. But that's all we got. We'll see you next episode with Drew's next 5 players up in this cycle.